Welcome back! Since I've already looked at interwar Japan and also talked about all the Central Powers, in this episode I will examine Japan's pre-war ambitions and its territorial expansion before and during the Great War. The Pacific Theater did not see huge land and naval battles, but it's still a good idea to go through the main events to see what each side was trying to achieve. By the early 20th century, Japan transformed itself from a closed feudalistic society into a modern nation with a rapidly developing industry and a strong military. They defeated Qing China in 1895, signed a treaty with Britain in 1902, then beat Russia 3 years later, and fully annexed Korea in 1910. The alliance with Britain was renewed twice. This allowed the British to focus on European waters and the German threat, but it also facilitated Japan's entry into World War I, when Britain requested help in locating German shipping in the region shortly after the war began. Japan was eager to take the opportunity. They sent an ultimatum to Germany in August 1914. No answer came, so on the 23rd of August, Japan declared war and quickly seized the Caroline, Marshall, and Mariana Islands without serious opposition. There was not much Germany could do. They didn't have significant forces in the region, although the Kaiserliche Marine did have an East Asia squadron that avoided destruction and wreaked havoc on Entente shipping in the following months. The only major German base was Tsingtao on the Shandong Peninsula in China. Naturally, it became the primary target. It was defended by more than 3,000 German soldiers, along with 100 Chinese colonial troops and a few Austro-Hungarian sailors. As Austria-Hungary refused to remove their only ship, the cruiser SMS Kaiserin Elisabeth, from the port, Japan declared war on them on the 25th of August in the name of Emperor Taisho. In early September, Japanese forces landed in Shandong province, covered by essentially the entire Japanese fleet with 6 battleships, but 1,500 British troops also arrived, along with 1,000 Chinese allies. The seaplane carrier Wakamiya launched the world's first naval-based air raids against German targets, while a full blockade was initiated. The German defenders held out until November against a much larger force, but then the Japanese stormed the city, which was also heavily bombarded, and soon surrendered. Casualties were about 700 on the German side and 2,000 on the Entente side, but one protected cruiser was also sunk by a German torpedo boat, while the German and Austro-Hungarian ships were scuttled just before the defeat. More than 3,000 Germans were transported to POW camps, where they were treated with respect, while more German possessions were taken in northern Micronesia. After these events, a small German force continued to operate in New Guinea, but its presence was inconsequential. In the meantime, Japan sent 3 groups of surgeons and nurses to Europe, to Petrograd, Paris, and Southampton. Their assignment was soon extended to 15 months, while a battle cruiser was sent to Egypt to protect a naval convoy. After the fall of all German Pacific colonies, the focus was placed on the East Asia Squadron, which continued to disrupt Entente shipping in the region with its 5 cruisers, 2 outdated unprotected cruisers, and a few smaller vessels. Since no more German bases were available, these ships were left homeless. Refueling and restocking on ammunition was next to impossible. Their complete destruction or capture was only a matter of time. Against all odds, Vice Admiral von Spee managed to hide from both the Japanese Imperial Navy and the Royal Australian Navy, and while most of his ships sailed towards Chile with the aim of returning to Germany through the Atlantic, the cruiser SMS Emden was sent to the Indian Ocean to continue its solo commerce raiding. Emden eventually intercepted 29 ships, destroying a Russian protected cruiser and a French destroyer. It bombarded oil storage facilities at Madras. Then it was beached after a brief battle with HMAS Sydney. Von Spee's squadron surprised a large British formation and defeated it in the Battle of Coronel, but a second British force, consisting of battlecruisers, destroyed most of his ships in December in the Battle of the Falkland Islands. SMS Dresden survived the encounter and returned to Chile, where it was later scuttled. One of its crewmen, Wilhelm Canaris, would later become head of German military intelligence, the Abwehr. In January 1915, Japan secretly delivered the 21 demands to Chinese President Yuan Shikai. They included the annexation of all former German territories in China, an increased sphere of influence in Manchuria and Inner Mongolia, and a takeover of an industrial complex, while China would no longer give coastal lands to other foreign powers, and it would essentially become a Japanese protectorate. A Chinese boycott of Japanese goods started. Beijing then turned to London and Washington. They forced Japan to drop most of its demands, eroding trust between these countries. In 1916, Japan and Russia agreed not to make a separate peace with Germany, while the Chinese Eastern Railway became the line between their spheres of influence in Manchuria. Britain again asked for naval assistance. They wanted to loan 4 new Japanese battlecruisers, but they were denied. When Germany resumed unrestricted submarine warfare in February 1917, Japanese cruisers and destroyers were sent to the Mediterranean to escort troop transports and hunt German and Austro-Hungarian submarines. 1 destroyer was lost, but 12 more were sent to France in the same year. Since the USA also joined the war on the same side, the Japanese concluded an agreement with them to reduce tensions. Both countries agreed not to take advantage of the opportunities World War I provided in China. Cooperation with the Royal Navy allowed Japan to learn modern anti-submarine techniques and technologies, while also gaining significant experience. After the war, 7 German submarines were given to them. These were examined in detail, which contributed to future domestic submarine development. In 1918, while Japanese ships were escorting convoys in the Indian Ocean, their influence was extended in China. After the Bolshevik Revolution in Russia, plans were drawn up to occupy Siberia as far as Lake Baikal, but this was scaled back due to American opposition. An Allied expeditionary force was sent to Vladivostok to rescue the Czechoslovak Legion and secure the area. Japan then decided to send 12,000 troops independently, but more than 24,000 arrived in August 1918. By November, all major ports were taken. This was followed by a westward march, which Japanese troops followed until Lake Baikal, with the Americans always nearby, keeping an eye on them. White Russian elements were supported, but these smaller Entente forces were pushed back by the Reds. The Czechs wanted to return home after their independent state was declared, and by the summer of 1919, everybody wanted out, except for the Japanese, who were trying to postpone their own evacuation. However, by 1922, the high cost and diplomatic pressure from the US and the UK forced the government to withdraw all troops. Japan participated in the Paris Peace Conference in 1919, alongside the Big Four, also gaining a permanent seat on the Council of the League of Nations. Britain warned Japan to stay away from the South Pacific, where Australia and New Zealand wanted to take German possessions, to not take the Dutch East Indies, and to not expand in the Eastern Pacific, which of course annoyed Japan. In the end, they took German islands north of the equator and former German possessions in China, which provoked student protests in Beijing and led to the May 4th movement. World War I allowed Japan to pay back all its debts and become a net creditor. Its economy benefited greatly, but rising inflation led to rice riots in August 1918. The war also contributed to the rise of Japanese militarism, as the army slowly became an increasingly independent political force. I will talk about the Chinese internal situation in another episode, as it is also worth examining. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video.